What happens when an official conclusion is delivered, yet the public conversation refuses to end? In the Menglong case, the story is no longer just about a tragic loss. It's about something bigger. Why online accounts disappear, why discussions migrate overseas, and why hundreds of thousands of people are still asking the same calm but powerful question: can we get clearer answers? Stay with me, because today we're not chasing rumors. We're unpacking why this case continues to resonate quietly, globally, and relentlessly. Some stories fade because they reach a natural ending. This one does not, because it still feels emotionally incomplete. When a public tragedy is met with a brief conclusion, many people do not experience closure. They experience a quiet dissonance. It is not always anger. Often it is a steady discomfort, the sense that the final page has been turned before the reader has understood the chapter. For viewers aged 35 to 75, that feeling can be especially familiar. We have seen situations where the gap between what is said and what is understood becomes the real headline. In the Menglong case, the ongoing attention is not only driven by fandom, it is also driven by human cognition. The mind naturally tries to organize uncertainty into meaning. When details appear to be missing, people revisit the same information, looking for coherence, a timeline that makes sense, a sequence that feels complete, a message that answers the basic questions of how and why with adequate care. That is why the conversation persists. It is an attempt, sometimes clumsy, sometimes thoughtful, to finish a story that, for many, still feels unfinished. Large petition numbers matter less as a statistic than as a signal of collective emotion finding a disciplined form. People do not sign petitions merely to be loud. Many sign because they want to be counted as calm witnesses. In a world saturated with instant outrage, a petition can look like something older and steadier, a request that says, "Please take our questions seriously." For mature audiences, that is a recognizable civic instinct, an attempt to translate grief into procedure. The deeper point is that tragedy often divides the public into two roles. Some mourn privately, turning away from the noise. Others feel compelled to protect meaning, believing that a life should not end in ambiguity. Petitions become the bridge between those impulses. They do not prove a particular theory, and they do not replace investigation. But they reveal a powerful social fact. A significant number of people feel emotionally unable to accept a conclusion that has not been accompanied by fuller explanation. In that sense, the 710,000 effect is not simply mobilization. It is grief-seeking dignity, asking that a public loss be met with public clarity. When online accounts or content vanish, the public rarely experiences relief. Instead, many people feel a shift from sadness to unease. Silence in the digital age is not neutral. It can read like avoidance, even when there may be procedural reasons behind moderation or platform decisions. The problem is not only what is removed, it is what removal implies to the viewer. That certain questions are unwelcome, or that attention itself is treated as a threat. This is where trust begins to fray. If the public is already uncertain, disappearance of discussion does not reduce speculation. It often intensifies it. People begin to treat absence as evidence, even when absence proves nothing. And once that pattern takes hold, the conversation becomes more emotional and less factual, because people are responding to a perceived power imbalance. A person is gone. Institutions remain. Platforms remain. Yet the public's ability to ask, compare, and reflect appears to shrink. For many older viewers, this triggers a familiar moral instinct. If a conversation is being narrowed rather than answered, then the remaining space fills with suspicion. Silence becomes loud, not because it confirms wrongdoing, but because it weakens the sense that anyone is truly When discussion feels constrained in one place, it rarely disappears. It relocates. That relocation changes the tone. Once conversations move to overseas platforms, they often become less about immediate emotion and more about persistence. People begin archiving screenshots, comparing reports, tracking how language changes over time. In effect, the audience shifts from being passive consumers to informal custodians of the record. This is not necessarily because overseas communities have better information. It is because distance can produce a different kind of patience. Viewers outside the immediate media environment may feel freer to ask questions without fearing immediate social penalties. They also bring different cultural expectations. In many Western contexts, for example, the public is accustomed to longer-form explanations, press accountability, and follow-up reporting. In Japan and South Korea, there is often heightened sensitivity to reputational harm and public responsibility, especially when tragedy touches a well-known figure. As these expectations meet, the case becomes international, not only in reach but in meaning. The conversation turns into a reflection on how societies handle public grief, how institutions respond to doubt, and how digital borders are now porous. In that sense, migration is not escape. It is continuation under a wider sky. Over time, public attention often moves from the specific to the structural. In this case, many viewers start with a single question: what happened? And end up facing a broader one. What kind of system allows doubt to linger this long? That is where the entertainment industry enters the conversation, not as a villain in a simplistic story, but as a complex environment shaped by contracts, reputations, schedules, and intense expectations. For audiences aged 35 to 75, this resonates because it mirrors other industries where individuals can become replaceable parts in a machine. The glamour is visible, the pressure is not. And when tragedy occurs, the public instinctively wonders about the unseen conditions. What protections exist, what incentives dominate, what can be said openly, and what is kept quiet to preserve stability. Handled responsibly, this discussion does not require accusations. It requires empathy and realism. It asks us to consider how fame can magnify vulnerability and how professional structures can make personal well-being harder to prioritize. In that sense, the Menglong case becomes a lens through which viewers examine a broader social concern, the cost of performance, and the responsibility of systems that profit from it. If you found this breakdown thoughtful and balanced, please subscribe to Update X24/7 and turn on notifications. We aim to cover sensitive stories with care, focusing on clarity, context, and the human side of the headlines. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us for the next update as this conversation continues to unfold.